Unprecedented scenes are being seen in the city of Cairo. Thousands of protesters now, a million march is marching towards Cairo's central square. Scenes that have not been seen across the Arab world are being witnessed this time. Could this be history in the making? The army also is choosing now not to shoot on the demonstrators. The protesters are asking for Mubarak to leave the country and are marching towards the presidential palace. Good evening, hello and welcome. Yes, dramatic pictures to which we will turn over the next hour. It's being called the March of a Million at Liberation Square in Egypt's capital, Cairo. The revolt against President Mubarak's 30-year-old rule has now reached flashpoint.
They are not going to stop short of change of regime, change of Mubarak.
Egypt's opposition leader Al-Baradei now says he's open to leading the country if people want him to. It's a CNN exclusive. Our reporters are spread out across Ground Zero. Shockwaves across the Arab world. Jordan's King Abdullah sacks his prime minister after the protest. Our top story tonight, the people's revolt against the 3-decade-old Hosni Mubarak regime in Egypt is now raging on in what's being described as the March of a Million. Protesters have marched into Cairo's Tahrir Square. The army, meanwhile, has declared that the demands of the protesters are legitimate and said it would not open fire on them. Several judges have also now joined the protest for democracy. The march is proceeding from the Tahrir Square to the presidential palace as pressure mounts on President Hosni Mubarak, with even key ally Turkey now asking him to meet popular demands. Let's cut across straight to Al Jazeera and CNN, where we are getting live reports at the moment.
That what they want for sure is not to have the same faces, the same names, reshuffle again and have. And that is causing, of course, a lot of questions about if and when Mubarak does step down, who is going to take over. But this was largely a youth-driven movement. It began on Facebook, Twitter, social media. There's also been a very widespread debate, especially amongst the West and the United States, that if Mubarak falls, some sort of an Islamist government is going to take over. And that actually really irritates a number of demonstrators that we have been talking to, because they say that this is not an Islamist movement. This is a popular movement that is transcending all of Egypt's social levels, and that any leader who comes into power after President Mubarak is going to be held just as accountable to the people as they're trying to hold Mubarak. So it's all very much uncertain here in Cairo, but for now, at least, the military and the population do appear to have a mutually functional relationship. As most Egyptians who you talk to, not only are they shocked at the fact that so many are coming out en masse and partaking in this truly historic moment, but just as shocked at what their capital looks like. You drive around Cairo down some of the main streets, the shops are shut, windows are broken, awnings are torn. Gas stations, by and large, closed either because of security fears. People now know to keep converging on Tahrir Square no matter what, even if they aren't able to put out updates or messages on the social media forums. They're absolutely adamant that there's nothing that the Mubarak government can say or do that is going to move them away from this square and bring this to an end. But that is, of course, a very natural fear and concern here that there could be the onset of more violence.
Right now in Cairo, Egypt. Well, many of the demonstrations we've seen in Egypt have been planned online, with social media playing a pivotal role. The government has blocked internet access, but protesters are figuring out ways around that, and engineers at Twitter and Google are helping out. Relisa Vasilova joins us from our Egypt desk to explain some of that new software ingenuity. Relisa.
Well, Aisha, the latest option which is offered to the people is offered by Google. They came out with it
now from the Abu Zabar prison on the outskirts of Cairo.
3 days ago, this prison on the outskirts of Cairo was a no-go zone for the outside world. But on Saturday, in the chaos that followed Egypt's Day of Rage, looters broke in. They set the building on fire and freed thousands of inmates. We found prisoners inside the prison grounds. They told us they're not leaving. Some
being for themselves and also safety of their homes, because the people have had to protect their own homes because the police have not been on the scene. They left the scene. So it will be interesting to see how many people remain. Of course, as have been in the previous days, a curfew is in effect.
Okay, those pictures are playing out at the moment on the streets of Cairo. Let's go straight across to Dr. Wael Awad, South Asia Bureau Chief of Al Arabiya. Give us a sense, as you see those pictures, are we really seeing history in the making?
Of course, Rajdeep, it is history in the making in the Arab street, and people of Egypt have not dreamed of this for the last 30 years. Even we can see the academicians, the writers, the experts, the politicians are saying this is for the first time I feel the pride of being an Egyptian. A pan-Arabism country that has been the heart of Arabism in the Arab world has been now sidelined because of the wrong policy people feel that has been followed by the regime of Mr. Hosni Mubarak, and that's why people now in the street are jubilant that they are able to bring changes without an external intervention like they have done in Iraq, and they turn it into chaotic and a misery. Therefore, if the people can take their destiny into their hand, then it is welcome move, because irrespective of their ethnic belonging, their religions, all of them are in the street, and they are all supporting the changes in Egypt, and they wanted really to take part in the decision making for the future of their generation.
But there have been reports from time to time that what we are seeing is an Islamist revolution. Others are calling it a people's movement. How do you see it? Is it a people's movement at the end of the day, or is it driven by religion, by ideology?
No, it's nothing to do with the religion. The political parties, as you know, the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt is very strong Muslim Brotherhood. They have role to play in the government. They have been in political arena. They have been doing active role in the society. Therefore, the government have neglected the people of Egypt. These people of the Muslim Brotherhood have gained and filled up the vacuum of what have been done by wrongdoing by the government policy, which have widened the gap between the rich and the poor in Egypt. So therefore the Egyptian people are otherwise they are very conservative and they are Muslim, but the government of Egypt have been scaring the United States and the West that look, if the regime of Hosni Mubarak fall, then the alternative will be the Muslim Brotherhood, then there will be a dire consequences for the future of stability and for the future of relation with Israel and for the future of relation of the pro-American camp, which has been relinquishing in the Arab world with what is so-called the moderate Arab country that have put their hand with the United States, and the United States have already denied them the right of existence after they have exhausted them for more than 30 years, like what happened to Shah of Iran, followed by Saddam Hussein. Now it is Egypt, Tunisia. It's all the same. It is the same game that you have played, foreign powers, but you forgot your own people aspiration.
Okay, let's just go to an unnamed Egyptian military spokesperson who's spoken to CNN just a short while ago. Listen in.
Your armed forces have not and will not use force against its great nation, which has been supporting the armed forces throughout its great history. We emphasize that your armed forces are the shield and the fort which protect our great nation.
Okay, let's also hear from Mohammed Al-Baradei. He is, remember, the opposition leader who's become now, in a sense, a rallying figure for the opposition in Egypt. He spoke to CNN's Anderson Cooper. Let's listen in.
I think if they do that, that would be a bloody country. I mean, people now, as you have seen, they have been empowered. I mean, they have been beaten, and they are not going to stop short of change of regime, change of Mubarak.
And if there is a transitional government, would you run for president?
This is not, and again, Anson, this is not my priority at all. At this stage, moderate, democratic, and I will have achieved the last mission of my life, if you like. But as I always said, if people want me to run, I will not let them down. But that's not my priority.
can you predict what's going to happen? I mean, do you have a sense of if Mubarak leaves, when he might do that?
I think within the next 2 weeks things has to be clear, and I think if within the next 2 weeks things are not clear, I'm afraid that things will escalate. There is no, as I said, there's no going down.
Okay, let's go across back to live pictures coming in from Al Jazeera. This is the big story that has now convulsed the world. Are we seeing history in the making there in Egypt? Let's listen in once again.
Meaningless to the people. The change of the government, again, meaningless to the people. I think there's a major miscommunication between what we're seeing in the street, the people in the street, the Egyptians on the street, and not just the NDP, but the rest of the leadership at this point.
Okay, so clearly then there seems to be some cracks showing within your party, within the NDP. Let's talk more about the people who are out on the streets there. One of their key demands, of course, is that President Mubarak
in northern Italy, who gathered at the Egyptian consulate to show their anger at Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Over 5,000 protesters gathered outside the consulate to call for Mubarak to end his 30-year grip on power. The protesters rallied, chanted, hoisted banners and demanded change.
Our demands are no to the curfew and yes to liberty, democracy and social justice. These aren't difficult requests, they're simple. We just want the basic rights that the rest of the world has. Changing the government is not enough. Getting rid of the vice president is not enough. We must change the entire regime because 30 years have been too long.
Elsewhere in Europe, protesters in Geneva also shouted slogans in Arabic, French and English. Anti-Mubarak demonstrations were also held across the United States and Canada. Around 50,000 Egyptians live and work in Italy, and many say they had no choice but to leave Egypt and seek a better life abroad.
People here in Europe and also in all world, because they didn't have any chance to work in Egypt.
It's not just Cairo. Thousands in Alexandria have also joined the March of a Million across Egypt. These are the images that are shaking the Arab world and indeed the globe today. The students who've helped organize the protests are now concerned about their safety. CNN's Nick Robertson has attended a secret meeting arranged by the activists. He spoke to them about their plans of restoring security in the city.
Now we are trying to make a plan, strategic plan for to close all the borders of Alexandria and the places where we think and the districts where we think that well-structured robbers and vehicles and all this stuff we are hearing in the news.
To protect the population.
The population. Now there are a lot of popular committees everywhere, as you can see. But we are trying to close some critical points on different places on the borders.
How is it going so far?
Well, so far it's starting to develop, so we hope we can finish it by 5 or 6.
And what about the army? Are you working with the army?
Yeah, the army is very helpful and working with us, and it's a great cooperation between the masses and the army.
Do you feel that the army is on your side or on the president's side at the moment?
Look, I cannot be sure of this, but what I'm very sure is there is a strong cooperation between the masses and the army.
We also spoke to Fareed Zakaria, editor-at-large at Time magazine, asked him what he thought is the reason now for this unrest in Egypt and what will be the end result.
I think fundamentally this is about a very repressive regime that had maintained a kind of iron grip on Egypt and Egyptian society, that had recently been opening up the economy. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Both Tunisia and Egypt had been growing economically. Tunisia at 5%, Egypt at 6.5%. So that stirred things up. It raised expectations. It opened up some space in civil society. And it turned out that combined with the fact that politically there was no opening, there was in fact even more repression, produced a kind of explosive cocktail.
We'll of course be hearing more from Fareed Zakaria at 10 p.m. tonight. Egypt is remaining our big story. That will be at 10 p.m. with Sagrika Ghosh. Let's go back to images that are still coming in from across the Arab world. Those are images that are being captured now which really are sending convulsions across the Arab world, because news also coming in from Jordan. King Abdullah has appointed a new prime minister there too. So across the Arab world, the signs of protest and revolution can be heard. Those images coming in, as you can now see, from both Egypt and from Jordan. Abdullah too has appointed a new Prime Minister. Maruf al-Bakit, a former ambassador to Israel, has been now charged with the responsibility of launching true political reforms. He's been instructed by the king to enhance Jordan's democratic lives. This, remember, at a time when there have been protests on the streets of Jordan as well. Let me come to you, Dr. Awad, once more. It's spreading now behind Egypt. We're looking now at images that are coming in from Jordan as well. Do you see this spreading across the Arab world now?
It is a phenomena. It is a tsunami kind of things, and it is really causing the other leaders to take lessons from what happened in Tunisia. Some other president, like President Assad in Syria, start talking of reforms, economic reform in the country, and also appointed a committee to study what happened in Tunisia should not be repeated in Syria. So therefore, he's taking measures. So Jordanian also being in the street. People in Yemen, I was in Yemen also just yesterday, I came. People in Yemen also preparing for such kind of revolution. So I think it is spreading on the Arab capital. Sorry.
And is it the same factor? Is it the class war, the belief that there has been a dictatorship that has robbed the masses of their wealth? That this is really a class war that we are seeing across Egypt?
Look, there are 182 dictators in the world. We cannot clear the world in such kind of revolution. It's just a revolt of the people who felt that it is time to change. A president who stayed 30 years in power, he's been for so long changing the laws, amending the law to make it an heredity, to bring his son into power, avoiding the parliament to take decision, constitutionally taking measure to satisfy him and the group around him. This is measure where the people feel it. So the NGOs, the civil societies, the people in the street, the educated class felt that they have been neglected. So this is a genuine demand, and it's a welcome step. Anywhere in the world should be a welcome step by any means. But I would like also to focus on the role of the United States in developing this kind of relation and developing this kind of resentment within the society, especially in the moderate Arab states. Who are falling now apart are those countries who supported the American policy. Okay. Therefore, this is, I think, this is a very important point to focus on.
Okay, Dr. Awad, we're just going back to Al Jazeera to find out exactly, once again, the situation on the ground. Remember, Tahrir Square is where the masses are assembling. Listen in.
On the outer fringes of the square, people they suspected of having taken part in recent looting throughout the neighbourhoods of Cairo, particularly after nightfall. There's been so much looting and vandalism and robbery. Suspected looters were expelled from the perimeter of the square, and also there were a number of people apparently who were suspected of possibly being plainclothes police. So there does seem to be, if you like, at the moment there are purges, popular committees, people who suspect that someone approaching the square might have any intention or any agenda other than joining in this mass protest. They've been prevented from reaching the square.
All right, thank you very much, Jackie Rowland. For now, we are going to speak to Ahmed Amour now, who's a journalist in Tahrir Square among the crowds there. Ahmed, thank you very much for speaking to us. Give us a sense of what's happening around you there as night falls on this square.
Well, the perimeter of the square has been expanded substantially since yesterday. To get into the square now, you need to pass through about 3 or 4 different lines of civilian checkpoints that have been coordinated with the military. And people are getting patted down and their IDs are being checked. The people checking are apologetic, but they're explaining that this is necessary for security reasons. They don't want anybody who would have a different agenda to enter the square and make the demonstration about anything other than just getting Mubarak out.
Who exactly is checking the people who are trying to enter the square? Is it the army? Is it the police? Who exactly are these people?
I don't want to give the impression that the army is overwhelmed, but they definitely need a lot of help, and they're getting it from ordinary civilians. So we've seen a lot of vigilantes in these past few days, and I think this is an extension of that. Ordinary men on the street, standing up with the army and insisting with everybody going into the square show ID. It was explained to me earlier that that's to prevent secret police from entering and to prevent any criminal elements that made it out of jail in the past few days from entering the square as well.
Ahmed, do you have any idea what the military numbers out there might be?
You will have the right, the full rights for a social and economical process and for a welfare for the country. The economical progress of a country is totally related with a political reform, and this is what the people here are saying. They want a political reform, and later everything will be gonna be accomplished.
All right. Now, how do you think that this makes Israel feel right now? We've heard some of the protesters as well saying Gazans should be happy. Do you think Israel, they're holding a lot of meetings with ambassadors? They said that they're watching the situation very carefully. What do you think?
Well, I think that the main reason for this regime to that is still until now surviving is because they are the very well good neighbor for Israel. This regime is protecting Israel. He was in a big embargo against Gaza, and is still embargoing Gaza. And I think that when this regime will be stepped down, when we have a free Egypt, when we have a democratic Egypt, then we will have a free Palestine and a democratic Palestine. It is useless to say that we are struggling for the freedom of Palestine without the freedom of all the Arab world. And this dictatorship was the main reason for Israel to be a reality. And this is, again, we are saying that liberation of Palestine is the liberation of the Arab world, and I think it's useless, again, for the Palestinians to have their freedom without the freedom of all the Arab world.
Right. Now, people in Egypt are saying that they're not going to leave the streets until Hosni Mubarak's government is gone and him himself. Now, will the protests continue in Beirut as well?
Yeah, sure. This is the fifth protest. Tomorrow we have two protests. We have a protest in solidarity with Al Jazeera channel after it was banned in Egypt, and we also a protest against Al Arabiya TV because they are not having a fair coverage for what's happening in Egypt. And also, again, we will demonstrate here at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and every day it's a daily protest, the same as the protest that is happening in Egypt.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now, as you can see here, that the protesters do keep on coming in, and as Mr. Antar said, this has been the biggest one so far. It's the fifth day, and they will continue. Back to you.
We heard the journalist describe a very cordial relationship between the army and the police, and the protesters. It seems that the announcement by the army that it won't use force against the protesters has certainly galvanized once again these demonstrations.
Yes, I think so. There's definitely, from people here that you speak to, there isn't a fear from the military. In fact, there's very little military presence in and around Tahrir Square. No police presence at all that I could see even on the way in from the suburbs of Cairo to downtown. The only army presence is really around the Ministry of Interior, and even that is very small number compared to what we perhaps were expecting. And no one here is really talking about the army at all as a threat. But I do think that a lot of people who were worried about coming to this protest because of what the army may or may not do feel reassured now that they are in fact on their side and it's safe to be here.
Help us understand, help some of our viewers understand perhaps how this protest, this particular Million March protest today was organized, because communications have been extremely bad in Cairo. The internet is down, phone lines are very dodgy. How are the people who are there today, how are they able to get there? How did they know about this protest?
I think overwhelmingly it's word of mouth. I think that the internet, as you said, has been down. People have found ways around that slightly. There are some, apparently one modem that is still being used that people are using for some access. But generally, you don't find very many people with internet access. The phones have been working throughout the day. We heard that they wouldn't be, but in fact the mobile network has generally been working. Here in the middle of Tahrir Square, it's very difficult to reach other people who are also in the square, but calling outside hasn't been a problem. But really everyone knew about this protest a week on from the Tuesday march.
march, and they also are very aware of the Friday protest. So people will be coming in, and of course they're seeing it. People are watching on their television screens, and a lot of people here have just been telling me, a group of people have been telling me they get a lot of their information from the Al Jazeera live channel, and from there they know where they should be heading. But that is why really Tahrir Square has become such a rallying point, because it's now very easy just to tell people to come here. They know if it's a big day, this is where they should be.
At some point during the day, there was talk of the protesters possibly heading towards the presidential palace there. Is that no longer, on the cards? I mean, why are they not going ahead with that?
Well, what they decided, and this is, of course, I'm speaking in terms of the protest organizers that I've been in contact with, but there are people who have different ideas. But the general idea seems to be that the roads were so badly blocked, and the road that was leading to the presidential palace, about 5 kilometers long, was completely blocked up by the army. So there isn't very much point in going all the way there. In fact, I spoke to one person. He said, well, we know that the president's not going to be at his residence. There are rumors here that he's in Sharm el-Sheikh or elsewhere. So it would have been a symbolic march. The idea is now for them to stay here, to stay in Tahrir Square until Mubarak goes, however long it takes. They're saying that they will spend the night here, and that is why organizers have been, another protest, in fact, have joined in giving people food, drink, blankets. It's now getting bitterly cold. The sun has gone down.
Okay, those are the night pictures that you can see coming in from Tahrir Square, where really what we are seeing is history, we believe, in the making. Now remember, all phone lines and internet are completely shut down by the government in Egypt, but people are using fax machines, satellite modems to connect to people. Google has introduced Speak Tweet. CNN has more for you.
Since late last week, most Egyptians have been cut off from the internet. One service provider did stay online, allowing a tiny amount of traffic to get through. But late Monday night, Egypt pulled the plug on that as well. But that doesn't mean Egyptians aren't getting their message out. Far from it. They have been connecting to the net over telephone lines using fax machines and satellite modems. And then on Monday, I want you to take a look at this, Google came to the aid of Egyptian protesters with something called Speak to Tweet. Now, it allows people to use ordinary phones to call Google and leave voicemail messages. Google then posts them onto Twitter. And I want you to take a listen to one audio tweet apparently left by a Cairo protester on Monday.
Hi, this is Mona Saif from Cairo. I just wanted to let the world know that we have been disconnected from our last point of communication through the internet.
And worth noting, very few countries have ever completely disconnected their citizens from the internet. And you can see how this time Egyptians are showing how difficult it is to silence ingenuity and determination. I'm Rosemary Church, back to you.